In the last practical episode, we looked at one block deliverable. Today, I want to take the next problem. And it is about what happens when work doesn't follow the normal path. Because this is where managers often get pulled in again into the workflow. And when the workflow doesn't know where that exception belongs, everything comes back to the manager. So today I want to show you one simple workflow, an urgent priority change request. We will look at how it works before AI, what happens when AI is added on top, and what changes when the workflow is designed with an exception map. Because the exception is not always the problem. The routing is. And by the end of this example, I want you to see one thing clearly. If every exception goes to the manager, the workflow is not designed. The manager may still be needed, of course, but the manager shouldn't be the default route for everything the workflow doesn't understand. Let's start with current version and look at this first version of the work. You can see here that what happens when AI, and this is before AI, an urgent request comes in. Maybe it comes from leadership, a client, from a senior stakeholder, and the request sounds important. It says we need this urgently. Now the team has a problem because the team is already working on planned deliverables. There are deadlines already in motion. There are people already assigned to work. There are priorities already agreed. So the urgent request doesn't just create a new task. It creates an exception. And this is where the workflow starts to slow down. What happens here? The team pauses or hesitates. They are not sure whether they should stop what they're doing. They are not sure whether this request should jump the queue, or who has the authority to say yes, and what gets delayed if they accept it. So what happens usually? It goes to the manager. Now manager starts checking what this request actually affects in routine work. They look at current work, capacity, deadlines, who asked for it. They think about the business impact, of course, and ask whether this is really urgent or just loud. Then they have to negotiate trade-offs. If we accept this urgent request, what gets delayed? Which team member has capacity? Will this affect quality? Will this affect a client? Will this create pressure on someone who is already overloaded? Or can it damage trust with another stakeholder? So the manager is not just approving a request. If we look here, what's happening here? Manager is actually absorbing the exception. That is real burden. From the outside, the task looks simple. Someone asked for urgent work, and we're just looking at this is a task, manager will decide. But look inside, deep inside the work, there are several things happening at a time. Yes? priority is being judged. We need to look at capacity. Is there any capacity? We need to look at trade-offs, and we need to look at stakeholder expectations. Are they being managed? Team pressure is being absorbed. And accountability, it is held by one person. And while this is happening, the team waits for direction. That is why this becomes heavy. Not because one request came in and everything became heavy. It happens because workflow doesn't know how to handle a request that falls outside the normal path. So manager becomes the routing system. Now you will say that we can solve this issue with the AI, and yes, we can solve that. But the question is whether AI is only helping the manager make the same decision faster, or whether the workflow has actually been redesigned. So let's look at the second version. I'm going to show you the AI bolted version. You can see here how it looks like. And what happens in this, this is not yet agentic workflow redesign. This is AI being added as an assistant layer. Most of we are trying right now that way. It helps, of course. It can summarize the requests. It can check deadlines. It is helping you to draft an email or prepare different, you can say, options for managers. And that is useful part, but what we need to pay attention to here is the workflow is not changed. And there is no exception map in that part. That's why there is no design logic inside for routing. No clear rule that says where each type of exception should go. There is no system telling the agent who owns what. So even if AI makes the request clearer, it still sends the prepared information here back to the manager. The manager still has to ask, what kind of exception is this? Who owns it? Is this a priority issue? A capacity issue? Policy issue? What kind of issue is it? Is it people issue? Does this need escalation? This helps in administration, but it has not redesigned the workflow. That is the difference. What happens in AI bolted version? AI helps the manager see exception better. And in AI native version, the workflow knows where the exception belongs. And that only happens when the workflow is redesigned first. Because agents do not magically know who should own what. Yes, the work inside a system that has already defined owners, routes, triggers, escalation points, and where human judgment is required. So this work is not about intelligent routing. The work is about better preparation here. Manager is still routing the system. The burden is back on the manager, and that is the problem that we need to work on. And so now let's look at native version. What happens here? I want to be very clear here. AI is not deciding everything by itself. That is not the point at all. The point is that the organization designs the exception map first. Then AI works inside the map how you want it. The agent helps detect, classify, prepare, and route, but this is your job. But the workflow design decides where the exception should go, how should it work. And the human owners, of course, they remain accountable for that. And I'm going to show you this here. Let's look at the how AI workflow, edit workflow looks like. This is called AI native redesign. Now, what happens here is the urgent request comes in, but instead of treating it as one big problem, urgent workflow, it checks it against exception map. This is important shift. Why? Because urgent is not enough. Urgent can mean many things. Yes, urgent means, it may mean missing information. What's urgent? It may mean it's a capacity issue. Is it a priority conflict? It may mean policy or compliance risk, or a technical blocker. It may mean people impact, or leadership, or client risk. These are different exceptions, yes? And they should not all go to the same place. Here is the manager. Look through that. So the AI helps identify the exception type here, not to own the decision, of course, not to replace the humans. That's our job. That's your job. But to prepare the route. If the issue is missing information, it should go back to the requester or the input owner, not automatically to the manager. Look at it. Because the manager should not be chasing information that someone else owns. If the issue is capacity, it should not go to, it should go to the workload owner or team planning point, because the question is not only can we do this. The question here is, what changes if we do this? If the issue is priority conflict, it should go to the decision owner. That may be the manager, but it may also be a project owner, a department head, leadership sponsor, or whoever who has the authority to decide the trade-off. Here, if we compare that now, in the first version, the workflow doesn't know what to do with the exception. We saw that. So what happens there? The manager observed it. In the second workflow version, when AI came in, it describes the exception better, but it still comes back to the manager. So in the third version, when we consider the native approach, what happens? Exception is classified and routed to the right owner. The agent doesn't own the exception. What happens? The workflow owns the routing. And once the correct owner is triggered, the decision is recorded, ownership is visible. Now what happens? Work moves. That's what makes it different and faster and productive at the same time. Not just faster, because now it's clearer. It makes the route visible. It makes ownership visible. You have a clear accountability now, and it uses the manager where manager judgment is actually needed.